The Narmer ballot. This ballot commemorates the victories of King Narmer, who came from the south of Egypt to invade the delta in about 3200 BC. It represents the most important evidence that the first political unification in the history of mankind occurred in Egypt. It was found in Hierakonpolis, the ancient pre-dynastic capital, located in the south of Egypt by the British archaeologist Goebel during the excavation season of 1897-1898. On the left side, you can see King Narmer strikes down a foe. Many Egyptologists have been tempted to interpret this scene as the conquest of Lower Egypt by Narmer, and it was in front of the falcon Horus, who stands on the lotus and papyrus, and also he captures one of the victims or one of the king's enemy. Behind the king is a priest who holds beers for the king and similar stuff. On the downside, two dead enemies symbolizing conquered towns are represented underneath Narmer's feet. On the top of the second one, or the right one, you can see the name of Narmer is shown in a cirque, which is between two bovine heads, and this is a representation of the facade of the palace in that time. In the lower strip, you can see Narmer inspects a heap of beheaded corpses, likely to represent slain enemies after the battle. On the middle, you can see the taming of wild animals has often been viewed as a metaphor for the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. The bottom scene of the right face, there is a bull symbolizing the king destroys the walls of the city or a fortress. This ballot made of chest, and its height is 64 centimeters and its width is 42 centimeters. This is an adze which returns back to the first dynasty, and its length is around 18 centimeters. It was one of the most common tools used by carpenters in ancient Egypt was the adze. This adze is made of a metal blade attached to a wooden hand. It was used to hack small pieces of wood from larger blocks, to shape objects, and to smooth rough wooden surfaces. Adzes were used for carpentry in workshops throughout ancient Egypt, and miniature models of adzes were placed in the tombs for use in the life after. This desk is from the tomb of Himika from the first dynasty, and its diameter is 9.5 centimeters. Himika was a high official during the reign of Horus King Den of the first dynasty. His career can be traced through the different titles he carried during his life. And he was the owner of an impressive mastaba, or a tomb, located in the northern part of Saqqara, which is considered a masterpiece of architecture. On the convex side of the desk is depicted a pair of hunting scenes. One dog tracks and chases a gazelle, while the other dog has caught a gazelle and bites its neck. The figures are enhanced by a skillful contrast of colors. One of the dogs and the horns and hooves of the gazelles are carved from the soapstone desk itself. The second dog and the bodies of the two gazelles are inlaid in pink Vind stone, and the desk is made from soapstone and alabaster. This comb is for King Jer. It made of ivory and its length is 8 centimeters and width is 4.5 centimeters, and it dates back to the first dynasty. Some important artifacts were found in the tomb of the first dynasty king Jer at Abydos, such as this wide toothed comb made of hippopotamus ivory. The king's name is engraved inside the sirch or palace facade. The sirch is positioned below the depiction of the falcon god Horus on the comb. Horus, whose name is also written upon the comb itself. Also in the same tomb, we have found 4 bristles from this reign of this king, and it's made of amethyst, gold, lapis lazuli, and turquoise, and its length is 18 centimeters. These 4 bristles were discovered at Abydos in the tomb of King Ger of the first dynasty. They were likely fastened onto a linen wrapped forearm of a woman who might have been King Ger queen or another member of the royal family. The bristles were held in place by linen bandages, which made it possible to recover them in their original order of steering. 3 of the bristles are composed of various types of beads: gold, turquoise, lapis lazuli, and amethyst. The fourth one consisted of 27 blagos representing the palace facade, topped by the falcon god Horus. The bristles are of existing workmanship, demonstrating the skill of the ancient artists in their early period of the Egyptian history. The statue of King Khasegem, it returns back to the second dynasty and its height is 56.5 centimeters. The statue of King Khasegem depicts him seated on a low-backed throne, wearing the white crown and the wrap-around robe that is associated with the Hepsid festival. The king's right arm rests across his stomach, while the left arm sits on his thigh. He originally held royal symbols in his hands, but these are now missing. The king's Horus name is inscribed in front of his feet. Human figures in various poses depicting the king enemies decorate the sides of the throne's base, along with a record of the number of enemies. This statue found in a closed room called Sirdab, northeast of the funerary complex of King Djoser at Saqqara, is the oldest known life-size statue in Egypt. It depicts King Djoser himself seated on his throne and enveloped in a jubilee cloak. The statue was entirely coated with white plaster and painted. The deep-set eyes were once inlaid. The king has a ceremonial false beard and wears a black wig topped by the royal Nemes headdress. The front side of the pedestal is inscribed with hieroglyphic text indicating the name and emphasis of the king, Nisri Khet, which means the holified body of Upper and Lower Egypt. The statue is made of limestone and it dates back to the reign of Djoser of the third dynasty, and its height is 140 centimeters. This shell is made of gold in the third dynasty and dates back to the reign of King Sechem Its height is 5.2 centimeters and the length is 5.3 centimeters. This wonderful golden shell was found among other objects in the funerary complex of Sechem successor of Djoser of the third dynasty. It is a small container created in the form of a seashell. Its wings open on a tiny hang and clasps shut by means of two small exterior hooks. Its function may have been a hang on a chain as a pendant, or for use as a receptacle for cosmetics or pigments. Despite the discovery of a few other small fragments of the king representation in statues, this Ivory statue is considered to be the only existing complete sculpture of King Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid at Giza. His facial features bear a serious and purposeful expressions. The king is seated on a throne that is decorated on both sides with his name inscribed inside of the serch, or rectangular frame. Without the surviving name on the right side, it would have been impossible to attribute the statue to Khufu. The king is depicted wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt and Shidnet, the short plaited kilt of royalty. He holds in his right hand the ceremonial flail, a symbol of authority. The statue was discovered in two pieces. Entirely, only the body was found, with the head discovered 3 weeks later. King Khufu is the second king of the fourth dynasty, and the statue is made of ivory. Its height is 7.5 centimeters and its width is 2.5 centimeters. This statue for Khafra was carved out of diorite stone in the fourth dynasty of the Old Kingdom. The statue was found in the Valley Temple of Khafra at Giza, next to the Sphinx. It is one of the most fascinating pieces held by the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The great pharaoh Khafra is seated on his throne, wearing the royal name headdress, a short kilt, and false beard. On each side of the throne is carved of the Simatawi motif, a symbol of unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. As you walk around this statue, look out for Horus, the falcon wrapped around the head of the king. Imagine how the artists or the artist who created this exhausting carving conceived of Horus taking the king up to the sky in the afterlife. It is an unparalleled window into the ancient Egyptian world of 4,500 years ago. The statue made of diorite, and its height is 168 centimeters, its length is 96 centimeters, and width is 57 centimeters. This sculpture triad shows King Menkaura between the goddess Hathor on his right and the personification of Sinopolis, the seventh nome or territory of Upper Egypt, on his left. King Menkaura wears the crown of Upper Egypt and has a false beard. He wears a short pleated kilt and holds two small surrounding objects in his hands. The two ladies wear tight fitting dresses and have three-part wigs. Hathor wears her usual crown composed of the sun disk between the two cow horns, while the other lady is placed beneath a jackal, the symbol of her nome. It made of grey wake and its height 96 centimeters and width 38 centimeters. On the opposite side of this statue is another one. The second triad of Menkaura was intended to associate him again with the goddess Hathor, but this time also with the name of Deus Polis Barva. The king wished to enjoy resurrection and fertility from Hathor and endless offerings from the gnomes. He is represented here in an idealized form between Hathor with her horned sun-disk crown and the personification of Deus Polis Barva. The expert sculpting is giving a highly polished finish. This one is 93 centimeters high, and its length is 47 centimeters. King Menkaura or Macrinus was the owner and the builder of the third pyramid at Giza Plateau. The statues of Prince Rahotep and Princess Nefrut, painted of limestone, dates back to the 4th dynasty, and the height is 120 centimeters. Rahotep might have been a son of King Senefru, which would have made him a brother of King Khufu. He held the titles of a high priest of Ra at Heliopolis, general of the army, and chief of constructions. He's seen here wearing a short kilt, short hair, a fine moustache, and a heart-shaped amulet around his neck. Rahotep's wife, Nefrut, is described as the one acquainted to the king. She's seen wearing a shoulder-length wig, decorated with floral, denim, and a broad collar. Her natural hair can be seen under the wig. We recognize the distinction in the skin coloring of the two statues, reddish brown for the man and cream wash for the woman. This was an artistic convention followed throughout ancient Egyptian history. The colors are well preserved and the faces have realistic expressions. When the workmen discovered these two statues, the torchlights reflecting on the inlaid eyes of these two statues caused the workmen who first gazed on them to be horrified. They thought that they were alive. This segment of painted wall was found in the mastaba of Neferma'it and his wife Itit at Maydum. It decorated the lower part of one of the walls in the passage leading to Itit's chapel. The colors used here derived from the natural materials: white from limestone, red from hematite, and green from malachite. These materials were mixed with egg white before being applied. The panel shows six geese, two of whom are feeding on the grass, and those the ones which limit or border the segment. The segment is painted plaster. It dates back to the 4th dynasty. Its height is 27 centimeters, length 180 centimeters, and its width is 172 centimeters. It was originally believed that this head carving belonged to the body of a female goddess because of the absence of any male beard, a feature typically assigned to a king in portraiture. Yet the presence of a slight moustache along the upper lip suggested that the sculpture is in fact portrayal of King Woserkaf, the first king and founder of the 5th dynasty. It made of grey wake basalt and its height 38 centimeters and its width is 25 centimeters. Woserkaf has other colossal head which is made of granite and its height is 75 centimeters. This head of King Woserkaf was found in the Sun temple dedicated by the king to the god Ra at Abu Sir. The king wears the red crown of Lower Egypt, so fine and elegant are the features of the king that when the head was discovered, it was believed to be for the goddess Neith of Sais. However, the existence of a fine moustache on the upper lip proved that the head was king's portrait for Wasarkaf. The statue of Ra Nefer F, which made of painted pink limestone, dates back to the 5th dynasty and its height is 34 centimeters. This fragmentary statue of the pharaoh Ra Nefer F or Nefer Ra F Ra is missing the lower parts of the legs with the exception of one foot. He's also missing the lower half of his left hand. The king is wearing a black curly wig with a hole in the center, presumably where a royal cobra was attached because the coils are still visible. He also wore a false beard, but this is II is now gone. The statue of Sheikh al-Balad, or the statue of Ka'ibr. In ancient Egypt, Ka'ibr was a chief lictor priest, but the name Sheikh al-Balad came from the Egyptian workman of Mariette because he so strongly resembled the headman of their village. The carving is represented with natural hair, and he wears a long kilt. The eyes are inlaid with copper frames, while the whites are made of opaque quartzite. He holds an official baton in his right hand and in his left a tall walking stick. Although the original disappeared and a modern copy has replaced it, this statue found completely damaged and underwent several restoration processes. While here also this past is all that was preserved of the standing statue of Sheikh al-Balad's wife, which was found at the entrance to Ka'ibr Chapel in his large mastaba at Saqqara. The statue was originally covered with plaster and painted. The woman wears a wide spreading wig that covers her ears. The wig ends in small curls and is parted in the center. Two wide straps sculpturing in low relief supporting the long, tight-fitting robe. A broad collar was originally painted around her neck. Both of the two statues were made of sycamore wood and dates back to the 5th dynasty. Sheikh al-Balad statue is 112 centimeters high, while his wife is depicted on 61 centimeters high. This larger-than-life-sized statue portrays T, who was an important official during the 5th dynasty. It was discovered in a closed room called the Sirdab. Sirdab means underground passage, behind the southern wall of the offering chapel in a tomb. An opening in the wall in front of the statue would allow the priest to make offerings and burn incense in homage to the figure. T appears in all his dignity with an athletic body, wearing a stretched kilt with front panel. He stands in the traditional pose with his left foot forward and his arms resting at his sides. A short wig with a small locks covers his ears, and in his hands he carries short staffs. The statue made of limestone and its height 198 centimeters, its width 48 centimeters, and the length 78 centimeters. This statue is for the scribe Bitah Shipsis, is portrayed him as sitting on the ground with his legs crossed and holding a partly unrolled papyrus on his knees. This posture is common representation of reading scribe in ancient Egypt. A heart-shaped amulet hangs around his neck with a counterpoise at the back. The head of Bitah Shipsis is inclined gently towards the unrolled papyrus on his lap to read the text facing him. The inscription on the base of the statue gives the name and titles of Bitah Shipsis as the honored one, the priest Bitah Shipsis. The papyrus on his lap contains two lines of inscriptions written in black. The statue returns to the 5th dynasty and it's made of limestone, while its height is 42 centimeters. This statue, which made of plastered and painted limestone, dates back to the 5th dynasty and its height 43 centimeters, its length 22.5 centimeters, and the width is 15.5 centimeters. This statue of funerary priest Ka-im Kid was found in the tomb of a noble called Urini. The Solomon image depicts him kneeling, with his hands crossed in a relaxed pose and praying to his God, leaving all life concerns behind. The eyes of the statue are inlaid with obsidian for the pupil. and quartz for the whites of the eyes. This statue, which made of painted limestone and dates back to the 5th dynasty, its height is 26.7 centimeters, as the length is 16 centimeters and its width 10 centimeters. This statue is of a female brewer leaning over a big jar preparing beer. This servant is shown half nude and wearing only a long white coat. She wears a wig over her natural hair, which is visible on her forehead. Around her neck is a large multicolored fine necklace. The servant is depicted raising her head slightly to show her face or as if she was talking to someone. The beer was prepared in a big jar using fermented barley bread sprayed with date liquor. When fermented, the beer would flow from the hole near the base of the jar. This portrait with its relief was discovered in the funerary temple of King Bosorkaf. It depicts a flock of birds in papyrus marshes. The relief was painted and engraved with very fine details. Several kingfishers hover the air, while a green kingfisher is perched on the flower. A hobo, a crested bird with black and white wing patterns, is facing a Berber gallinule. A fairly large duck like water bird with short wings and a short tail. Butterflies and an ibis, a large bird of the Nile with a long carved beak, are portrayed in the relief. We can see also the head of a bittern, a medium-sized and usually secretive heron. This palette or this portrait is made of limestone and dates back to the 5th dynasty. Its height is 102 centimeters and its width around 78 centimeters. The statues of Ra-Nefer. This statue is of Ra-Nefer depicted him as a handsome, athletic, and muscular young man, wearing a short kilt tied to his waist and a simple short wig. He is portrayed in the traditional position, advancing with left leg forward, his hands by his sides, holding two cylinders, with a serious expression that is gazing into the distance beyond earthly life. Ra-Nefer was the high priest of Betah and Sukkor at Memphis. He was also charged with supervising the artists of the royal workshops. This statue made of limestone and it dates back to the 5th dynasty and its height is 178 centimeters, while this one represents Ra-Nefer standing while wearing an overlapped kilt of medium length. His hair is cut short and the eyes are painted. This splendid statue was found together with another statue almost identical in two niches in the chapel at his tomb at Saqqara. This statue shows him in later life, while the other depicts Ra-Nefer as a young man. This one also made of limestone and its height is 186 centimeter and the width is 58 centimeters. The statue of dwarf Seneb and his family was made of painted limestone and dates back to the 5th dynasty. Its height is 125 centimeters and the width is 22.5 centimeters. This statue depicts the dwarf Seneb and three members of his immediate family. His wife sits on his left, while his two children stand in the foreground in the place of Seneb's legs. Though dwarves were typically associated with entertaining their masters or dancing for the gods, Seneb is portrayed stoically with his wife linking her arm to his. The children are portrayed in the traditional manner of being nude and pointing their fingers towards their mice. The statue of Kai is painted from of limestone when it returns back to the 5th dynasty. Its height is 58 centimeters and the width is 25 centimeters. The statue shows the priest Kai sitting on a high-backed chair. He wears a shoulder-length wig decorated with horizontal rows of curls. Each eye is framed in copper, while his eyebrows are etched in raised relief. The lips are thin and finely drawn. The musculature of his body is very well defined, and Kai's right arm is bent across his chest. His left arm is resting on his lap on top of his short, white Tridentine kilt. On either side of Kai's legs are his children. They are very small figures and barely reach to his kneecaps. His daughter is wearing long white shirt dress and sits next to the left leg. Kai's son is standing naked next to his right leg. A depiction of naked figures with their fingers to their lips was an ancient Egyptian artistic convention for depicting male children. The statue of Khnumhotep, the priest and overseer of the royal wardrobe, was an ancient Egyptian dwarf who suffered from physical deformity. He is represented with an exaggerated large torso in proportion to his short legs and arms. The expression of his face is very characteristic. He has a broad chest and belly and relatively large ears. His name and titles are inscribed on the base of the statue, which made of limestone and dates back to the 5th dynasty, while its height is 46 centimeters. This double statue for Ni-Ma'at-Sid. Ni-Ma'at-Sid was a judge and a prophet in the pyramids of Nifri Ra Ka Ra, Nefer F Ra, and Newusser Ra. He wears a wide wig, short kilt, and polychrome necklace. This kind of sculpture is known as Bashido groups, but the symbolism isn't clear. They may have been intended to represent the person at different ages or the person with his ka, which is the guardian spirit. It is made of painted limestone and its height is 57 centimeters and dates back to the 5th dynasty. This amazing head of the falcon god Horus, lord of the sun and patron deity of kingship, was found below the floor of the main chamber of the temple at Hierakonpolis, north of Edfu, in the south of Egypt. The head, which is made out of beaten gold, was fixed to a copper statue of the falcon Horus. It is topped by a twin-plumed headdress and decorated with a royal cobra. The eyes are inlaid with rounded and polished obsidian pieces, which look very similar to the eyes of the real bird. It was certainly a cult statue which would have been set up on a base in the shrine with the royal statue placed under its protection. This statue, made of gold and obsidian and dates back to the 6th dynasty, its height is 37.5 centimeters and the width is 7.5 centimeters. Beautiful statue is of Mitri as a scribe and was found in his tomb at Saqqara, among other statues of him and his wife in various positions. Mitri is depicted in the customary posture of the scribe in ancient Egypt. The eyes are set in limestone with transparent stone and ring of copper finishing the effect. The body is entirely dark ochre color with the exception of colorful necklace decoration. This statue dates back to the 6th dynasty and made of wood with painted stucco. Its height is 76 centimeters and its width is 50 centimeters.